The moment this video appears in your reality, something deeper than coincidence has already taken place. You are not encountering this message by accident or by chance. You are meeting a reflection of a shift that has already begun inside you. Before your mind recognized it, your field registered an inner movement toward a higher timeline, and the appearance of this video is the mirror of that movement. Reality does not present what you are unprepared to meet. It reveals what your vibration has already signaled readiness for. In this way, synchronicity is not an invitation. It is confirmation. It shows you where you have already traveled internally, long before any external event seemed to guide you there. You stand at a threshold not because something new is arriving, but because something long active within you is finally becoming visible. The video appears at the exact moment when your inner landscape reaches a point of resonance strong enough to pull its reflection into form. Reality responds to internal coherence instantly, and the outer manifestation arrives only when your inner alignment has strengthened enough to be recognized consciously. This is why it feels unexpected yet uncannily precise. The timing is the intelligence of the field announcing that a part of you has already arrived somewhere your mind has not yet named. Synchronicity does not push you forward. It reveals where you already are. It is the echo of an inner choice made in silence, a vibrational signature that has matured to the point of expression. What you are seeing is not a suggestion of what could be. It is a reflection of what already is. This appearance marks a threshold because it shows that your internal frequency has crossed into compatibility with a higher version of your life. You would not be here if some part of you were not already standing at that altitude. The mind often imagines progress as something you must build or chase. But at the level of consciousness, movement happens through recognition. When something appears, it is not calling you forward. It is revealing that you have already shifted far enough to perceive it. This is the quiet power of synchronicity. It lets you see the evidence of your own expansion mirrored back to you without effort, without strain, and without forcing a path. In this moment, what matters is not analyzing why the video showed up, but noticing the part of you that was ready for it. That readiness is the real event. The appearance is simply its reflection. And when you understand that, you no longer wait for signs to lead you. You recognize that signs appear because you have already moved. If you choose to stay within this frequency, subscribe, it anchors the momentum you've already begun. The moment you clicked, something already moving within you was acknowledged. You didn't create the motion through the action, you recognized it. The click wasn't born from impulse or curiosity alone. It was the surface expression of a deeper resonance, a part of you responding to its own reflection. When a higher timeline begins to emerge inside your field, it seeks coherence. It seeks confirmation. And your click is that confirmation. Not a step forward, but a recognition of the step already taken within. You don't click because you hope something will shift. You click because something has already shifted enough for you to feel the pull. That subtle pull is the signature of expansion. It is the inner self choosing to be seen. When your finger moves, it is responding to a frequency you've already aligned with, even if only partially. This is why the action feels effortless. This is why it feels natural. It is not the cause of transformation but the expression of alignment. In that small gesture, there is a declaration, I am willing. Willing to see what I have been sensing. Willing to explore what I have been becoming. Willing to move toward the version of myself that has already begun to take shape. This willingness is quiet, but it is powerful. It does not push. It does not force. It allows the existing momentum to gather strength through acknowledgement. Recognition amplifies movement. Allowing accelerates evolution. With the click, the energy that was once internal begins to form a trajectory. A trajectory is not created out of desire, it is created out of coherence. When the inner state aligns with a higher version of self, the field responds by arranging pathways that match that state. Your click is the point where the inner momentum becomes visible enough to enter the outer world. This is why the moment feels significant, even if unspoken. You are not starting a journey but meeting one you are already walking. The click marks a transition from unconscious motion to conscious participation. Before the action, the shift existed as a subtle current. After the action, you become aware of your part in it. This awareness strengthens the movement. It gives shape to the trajectory. And once something has shape, it begins to gather coherence. Coherence is the substance of timelines. When your inner state and your chosen action match, the timeline that resonated with you gains stability. The higher path becomes more than a possibility, it becomes the direction your energy prefers. So the click is not small. It is not trivial. It is a moment in which your inner and outer worlds align long enough to reflect the truth of your becoming. Through this alignment, the higher timeline gathers clarity. The motion that began within is now acknowledged without. And every acknowledgement strengthens its reality. Implementation is not about adding anything to yourself. It is the moment you stop feeding energy into what no longer matches who you are becoming. When you implement an insight, you are not stacking new layers onto an identity. You are withdrawing attention from patterns that were maintained only by your participation in them. Old timelines do not collapse through force. They dissolve when you no longer supply the emotional and mental currents that once held them together. Implementation is the quiet act of ending that supply. When you take an idea and live it, even in the smallest way, you shift from conceptual understanding to embodied truth. Concepts live in the mind. Embodiment lives in your field. And the field is what reality responds to. When you apply a teaching, the center of gravity of your identity moves. You no longer stand where you used to stand, and because timelines are coordinated around identity, the one that matched your former position begins to lose coherence. It cannot survive without the version of you that sustained it. This is why true change feels subtle. You are not constructing a new reality from scratch. You are letting the old one fade due to lack of resonance. Implementation is the act of choosing a new frequency and maintaining it long enough for it to become your default orientation. And when it does, the structures that once reflected your previous state no longer recognize you as their anchor point. They lose form because you are no longer the self they were built around. Embodiment is the point at which the shift becomes real. Not because something external happens, but because your inner alignment stabilizes enough for the field to reorganize itself. What once seemed familiar begins to feel distant. Emotional reactions that once defined you lose their urgency. Patterns that once felt inevitable begin to weaken. This weakening is not decay. It is the natural consequence of stepping out of resonance with what belonged to an older version of yourself. As the new alignment strengthens, reality begins to respond differently. Not suddenly, and not dramatically, but unmistakably. New insights arise. New behaviors feel natural. Old triggers lose power. These are signs that the new timeline is stabilizing. A timeline requires coherence to exist. When you embody the state that matches it, coherence forms around you. When you withdraw from the state that powered the old timeline, coherence dissolves behind you. Implementation, then, is the true collapse point. Not the inspiration, not the recognition, not even the willingness. It is the moment you live the shift rather than think about it. In that moment, the old timeline loses access to you. It cannot claim your energy. It cannot hold your identity. And without those, it cannot survive. The collapse is not dramatic because the collapse is not destruction. It is absence. Absence of resonance. Absence of participation. Absence of the self who once kept it alive. When you embody the new alignment, the old path simply has nowhere left to stand. Reality responds long before you act. It moves in accordance with the frequency you are holding, not the effort you are exerting. The field around you is not passive or distant, it is alive, receptive, and continuously reorganizing itself to match the internal instruction you are broadcasting through your state of being. This instruction is not carried by words or intentions. It is carried by coherence. Coherence is the signal the field listens to. When your internal state becomes unified, aligned, and steady, the field around you begins to crystallize in ways that reflect that alignment with striking precision. External circumstances are not assembled through force. They are shaped by resonance. What appears in your world is the structural translation of the frequency you occupy. It is the visible architecture of your invisible alignment. When you shift your inner state, you alter the blueprint the field responds to. And because the field is immediate, it begins reconfiguring the moment the coherence inside you changes. You may not see the rearrangement at first, but the movement begins instantly, like subtle currents adjusting beneath the surface before the waves appear. This is why intention alone cannot move reality. Intention without coherence is noise. It carries no weight, no clarity, no gravitational pull. But when your inner state aligns with what you intend, you create instruction. Instruction is different from desire. Desire asks. Instruction directs. Desire reaches outward. Instruction radiates from within. And the field responds to instruction every time, without hesitation, because it is built to reflect the state of consciousness interacting with it. As your inner coherence strengthens, your influence on the field becomes cleaner, more stable, and more direct. You no longer send mixed signals born from conflicting identities. You no longer dilute your direction with contradiction. Instead, your frequency becomes focused, and the field responds by simplifying your external world. Obstacles dissolve. Clarity increases. The path ahead becomes less fragmented because you are no longer fragmented. The field mirrors the unity you establish within yourself. This responsiveness is not reward or punishment. It is physics at the level of consciousness. When you shift your state, you shift the equations governing your experience. What you meet in your reality is the natural outcome of those equations. Nothing is arbitrary. Nothing is accidental. Everything you encounter carries the imprint of the frequency you inhabit in the moments before it arrives. Understanding this removes the pressure to push against the world. You begin to see that the world is not something you must manage or manipulate. It is something you instruct. And the instruction is not spoken. It is lived. It is held. It is stabilized through presence. When you treat reality as a field responding to your state rather than an obstacle resisting your will, everything changes. Control dissolves. Forcing becomes irrelevant. Alignment becomes the only meaningful action. And through alignment, the field reorganizes itself around you with an elegance that feels like synchronicity, but is, in truth, the natural consequence of coherence. Vibration is not something you try to send out into the world. It is not an output you manufacture or a signal you deliberately broadcast. Vibration is the state of being you occupy in this moment. It is the quality of your awareness, the tone of your inner landscape, the frequency woven through your thoughts, emotions, and assumptions. It is identity in motion. And because identity shapes the architecture of your reality, vibration is the mechanism through which timelines become accessible or inaccessible to you. You do not attract what you want. You interface with what you are. Experiences, opportunities, and outcomes do not respond to your wishes, they respond to your baseline. They respond to the version of yourself you are embodying. When you understand vibration as identity rather than output, you stop trying to manipulate the external world. You begin to recognize that everything you meet is a reflection of the internal identity you have stabilized. This identity is not defined by the story you tell about yourself, but by the quality of consciousness you inhabit when no one is watching. When your vibration changes, your identity changes. And when your identity changes, the set of realities that can interact with you reorganizes instantly. Not gradually, not eventually, but immediately at the energetic level. The delay you perceive is only the time it takes for the external world to restructure around the shift you have already made internally. The real selection happens the moment your state changes, because the field registers identity first, expression second. Vibration becomes the architecture of your reality because it determines which versions of life can recognize you. A timeline is not something you try to reach. It is something that becomes visible only when you match its frequency. You cannot force yourself into a higher trajectory. You align into it. And alignment happens not through effort but through being. Through choosing the state that reflects the self you know is possible. Through allowing that state to become familiar enough to feel natural. When you understand vibration as identity, you stop performing alignment and begin embodying it. There is a profound difference. Performing tries to convince reality. Embodiment instructs it. Performing relies on effort. Embodiment relies on coherence. One says, I hope this works. The other says, this is who I am now. And the field responds only to the second. Your vibration is the anchor point through which reality organizes itself around you. Change the anchor, and the entire configuration of your life begins to shift. Not because you forced it, but because you can no longer interface with the experiences that belong to a former version of yourself. They lose access to you the moment your vibration no longer matches theirs. You are not here to project signals. You are here to inhabit a frequency. The rest rearranges itself accordingly. Emotion is not random movement within you. It is the most direct guidance system consciousness has ever created for itself. Emotion reveals your relationship to your own alignment in real time. When you feel expansion, you are not receiving a pleasant sensation, you are receiving confirmation. Expansion is the felt sense of resonance between who you are being and the higher trajectory available to you. It is alignment translated into experience. It is the inner world saying yes. Contraction is not punishment or failure. It is information. It is the signal that the state you are occupying does not match the path you intend to move into. Contraction shows you where your energy is pulling against itself, where identity has split between the self you have outgrown and the self you are becoming. It is misalignment translated into sensation. It is the inner world saying not this. When you understand contraction as guidance rather than discomfort, you stop resisting it. You begin to listen. And in listening, you regain clarity. Emotion is the navigational system of consciousness because it bypasses the mind entirely. The mind analyzes, interprets, and often distorts. Emotion simply reflects. It delivers the truth of your alignment without needing explanation. You do not need to figure out why you feel what you feel for the guidance to function. You only need to acknowledge the message. The moment you do, you already begin shifting toward coherence. Expansion and contraction are not moral judgments. They are directional cues. Expansion points toward the timeline aligned with your highest state of being. Contraction points toward the identity you are releasing. When you follow expansion, you accelerate into the trajectory that matches your true resonance. When you honor contraction, you recognize the places where your energy is still entangled with outdated patterns. In both cases, emotion is moving you toward clarity. This is why forcing yourself into a state you do not feel never produces transformation. It creates internal contradiction. The field responds to your actual frequency, not the one you attempt to imitate. When you ignore contraction or pretend to be expanded, you muddy the signal and slow your movement. But when you allow yourself to feel what is present without judgment, the emotion completes its purpose. It guides you back into alignment. Allowing dissolves distortion. Recognition creates coherence. Emotion is the bridge between your conscious experience and the deeper intelligence of your being. It is always immediate, always precise, and always aligned with the highest path available to you. When you treat emotion as guidance rather than reaction, you stop trying to manage it and begin to use it. Expansion becomes your confirmation. Contraction becomes your compass. And through both, you navigate toward the version of yourself already waiting in a higher timeline. Emotion is not a byproduct of consciousness. It is its language. And when you learn to hear it, you move through your reality with a clarity that no external sign can provide. Timelines do not stretch out before you as roads waiting to be chosen. They exist as parallel expressions of identity, each one shaped by a distinct vibrational signature. A timeline is not a destination you travel toward, it is a version of yourself you step into through the state you embody right now. When you understand this, the idea of shifting timelines becomes less mystical and more immediate. You are not trying to reach a distant future. You are selecting the identity through which reality will configure itself around you. A timeline is simply the external expression of an internal configuration. When your identity shifts, the reality that corresponds to that identity becomes available. When your identity stabilizes, that reality becomes dominant. Everything you experience is matched to the frequency you are inhabiting. This is why two people can stand in the same environment yet live entirely different realities, because their internal configurations differ, and the field responds to each configuration uniquely. Reality is personal not because it adapts to preference, but because it reflects identity. Shifting timelines, therefore, is not about effort. It is not about forcing circumstances or altering external conditions through will. It is about shifting who you are being. When you choose a different state, one rooted in clarity, alignment, openness, or expansion, you are entering the vibrational pattern of a different timeline. Your external world may take time to reflect the shift, but the shift itself occurs the moment your state changes. The identity you embody is the switch that determines which trajectory your life aligns with. This is why timeline jumping is always happening, whether you notice it or not. Every moment you alter your state, every moment you choose presence over fear, openness over resistance, coherence over fragmentation, you initiate a shift. The world does not need to reassemble itself dramatically for the change to be real. Timelines overlap, flow into one another, and shift through subtle changes in how you hold yourself internally. You move into new expressions of reality by moving into new expressions of yourself. The mind often imagines that a timeline must be built or achieved. But timelines do not require construction. They exist as potentials, each aligned with a specific version of you. What requires attention is not the timeline but the identity. When your identity expands, the timeline that matches that expansion rises to meet you. When your identity contracts, you fall into alignment with a timeline shaped by that contraction. You do not travel between realities, you become the version of yourself that corresponds to the reality you experience. This is why the most powerful shifts happen quietly. No struggle. No performance. No grand leap. Just a subtle but undeniable change in who you are being. And through that change, the entire landscape of possibility rearranges itself. When you recognize that timelines respond to identity rather than action, you stop chasing alternate realities. You begin to inhabit them. Coherence is the silent threshold you must cross before a higher timeline can recognize you. It is not a mood, not a temporary uplift, not a moment of inspiration. Coherence is the alignment of your emotional, mental, and energetic states into a single, unified frequency. When you are coherent, there is no contradiction inside you. There is no part of you asking for expansion while another part holds on to old limits. Coherence is the state in which your entire being speaks one instruction to the field. And only when that instruction is unified does a higher timeline open its doors. Desire alone cannot move you there. Desire can illuminate the direction, but it cannot generate the frequency that grants access. You can want clarity, abundance, alignment, or transformation with great intensity, yet still be incoherent. You can reach for a higher reality while holding beliefs, emotions, and assumptions that contradict it. In incoherence, your signal becomes diffused. The field receives mixed instruction. And mixed instruction cannot produce a stable trajectory. Coherence is the key because the higher timelines you sense are not built around your desires, they are built around your identity. Each timeline has a distinct vibrational structure, a specific pattern of being that must be matched. When your internal state aligns with that pattern, you become eligible for the timeline, not through effort, but through resonance. You cannot enter a timeline whose frequency contradicts your state. You can imagine it. You can hope for it. But you cannot inhabit it until coherence forms. This is why glimpses of higher versions of yourself may come and go. Those glimpses occur when your state briefly aligns with the structure of a higher timeline. But without consistency, the alignment dissolves, and the experience fades like a reflection in shifting water. Coherence is what turns a glimpse into a doorway. It transforms a fleeting resonance into a stable connection. When you become coherent, your energy no longer leaks into outdated patterns. Your attention no longer feeds internal conflict. Your identity no longer fractures between who you were and who you are becoming. Everything inside you aligns toward a singular direction. That unity is magnetic. It is precise. It is unmistakable. And the field responds immediately to that precision by reorganizing your reality according to the instruction your coherence provides. Coherence is not created through effort. It is created through allowing. Through releasing the tension of trying to become something and choosing instead to inhabit the state that already matches the timeline you seek. This is the shift from striving to being. From fragmentation to wholeness. From wanting a reality to resonating with it. A higher timeline is not earned. It is matched. And the moment your coherence stabilizes, that timeline becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Collapse does not happen through struggle. A timeline does not disappear because you pushed against it, fought it, or tried to escape it. It dissolves because the identity that once held it in place is no longer present. When you shift your internal state, the structures that depended on the old version of you lose their anchor. They become incompatible with who you are now. And incompatibility is the quiet force that ends an outdated reality without resistance, without conflict, and without dramatic unraveling. It simply cannot remain, because the self it was built around is no longer being lived. You do not need to dismantle your old patterns piece by piece. You do not need to analyze them, negotiate with them, or overpower them. The moment you stop embodying the identity that created them, they begin to fade on their own. Not because you forced change, but because you withdrew the vibration that sustained them. Old timelines require your participation. They require your belief, your emotional charge, your habitual reactions. Without these, they cannot maintain coherence. And when coherence dissolves, collapse happens naturally. This is why certain habits or thought patterns suddenly lose their grip as you evolve. You may try to engage with them the way you once did, but they feel hollow, unfamiliar, or strangely distant. That distance is the space created by your new identity. The old reactions no longer fit you, and in that mismatch, they lose their ability to define your experience. You have outgrown the frequency that once made them feel inevitable. Growth is not the building of something new but the shedding of what cannot travel with you into your expanded state. When an identity no longer resonates, everything connected to it loses resonance as well. Relationships change. Priorities shift. Desires evolve. The pathways that once felt aligned begin to fall away, not because you are forcing change, but because they no longer recognize you. You have stepped out of the vibrational landscape they belonged to. Their collapse is not a failure of continuity. It is the natural conclusion of an identity that no longer exists. Reality organizes itself around who you are being, and when that identity changes, the structures of the old reality lose their blueprint. This collapse is gentle. It is quiet. It often goes unnoticed until you look back and realize the person who once lived that life no longer feels like you. There is no dramatic ending required, because the collapse is simply the absence of resonance. Absence of identification. Absence of alignment. Timelines cannot survive these absences. They fade like echoes, leaving space for the new coherence you are embodying to shape the reality ahead. When you recognize that old timelines disappear through incompatibility rather than resistance, you stop trying to force your way into transformation. You allow identity to evolve. You let what no longer matches fall away without effort. And through that allowing, you move cleanly into the timeline that corresponds to the self you are now choosing to be. The present moment is the only place where reality can shift because it is the only place where you exist without distortion. The past is memory filtered through identity. The future is projection filtered through expectation. Neither holds the frequency of who you are right now. And because timelines respond only to the frequency you embody in this moment, the present becomes the singular point of selection. You cannot choose a new reality from who you were. You cannot choose it from who you hope to become. You choose it from the state you occupy now, because now is where identity is active and visible to the field. When you are fully present, you are not dragging the weight of your past or the pressure of your imagined future into your vibration. You are no longer carrying emotional echoes that distort your signal. Presence dissolves interference. It brings clarity to your frequency. And clarity is what the field responds to. The moment you enter the present, you step into a state where your internal instruction becomes coherent enough for reality to reorganize itself. This is why even a brief moment of genuine presence can shift the trajectory of your day, your relationships, or your sense of self. Presence collapses what is no longer needed and amplifies what is emerging. Timeline shifts are not dramatic events. They are silent decisions made at the level of being. When you shift your state in the present moment, you recalibrate the identity through which you meet reality. You alter the foundation upon which experience is built. And because identity is the anchor of timelines, a single shift in presence is enough to reposition you into a different trajectory. You may not see the external evidence immediately, but the movement has already occurred. The field registers your state before your senses do. Trying to shift timelines by analyzing your past only reinforces the identity that created those experiences. Trying to shift by projecting into the future pulls you into longing rather than alignment. Both approaches keep you outside the point of power. Only presence gives you direct access to the identity shift required for a new timeline to form. Presence is not passive. It is the most potent form of participation you can offer to your own evolution. When you choose presence, you choose clarity. When you choose clarity, you choose alignment. And when alignment stabilizes, the trajectory of your life changes without effort. Every moment offers a new selection point. But most people miss it because they are entangled in memory or anticipation. When you return to the present, you return to the only place where the self you are being can change. And when the self changes, the timeline changes. Not through force, but through resonance. Not through planning, but through recognition. Not through striving, but through inhabiting the frequency of the version of you that already exists on the path you want to live. The present moment is the doorway. And the moment you walk through it, reality begins to rearrange itself around who you have chosen to be. Allowing is the moment you stop gripping the version of yourself that cannot move forward. It is not passive and it is not surrender in the sense of giving up. Allowing is the release of inner tension, the softening that lets your energy reorganize into the configuration it has been trying to become. Resistance freezes you in the posture of your old identity. It holds you in patterns that no longer reflect your alignment. But the instant you allow, the instant you stop tightening around what you think should happen, movement becomes possible. Not because the world changes, but because you stop obstructing the shift already unfolding within you. Allowing accelerates transformation because it dissolves the rigidity that distorts your coherence. Rigidity creates friction. Friction slows momentum. Friction binds you to the old timeline. When you resist what you feel, you reinforce the state generating the resistance. When you resist where life is guiding you, you strengthen the narrative you are trying to transcend. But when you allow the moment to be exactly what it is, without pushing or pulling, your energy expands. And expansion is what aligns you with higher trajectories. Movement does not come from force. Force fractures your field. It creates contradiction. It tells the universe one thing while your state says another. In that contradiction, clarity dissolves. But allowing removes the contradiction. It lets the new frequency settle. It lets the shift complete itself. Change becomes natural instead of effortful. It becomes fluid instead of forced. And because the field responds to frequency rather than effort, allowing becomes the fastest way to move into a higher configuration. Allowing is receptivity. Receptivity is openness. And openness is alignment. When you are open, you can receive the version of yourself you are becoming. You can feel the subtle signals guiding you toward coherence. You can sense the direction of your highest timeline without needing to analyze it. Openness creates space for recognition. Recognition creates alignment. Alignment creates movement. When you stop resisting what is, you stop anchoring yourself to a state that no longer matches your evolution. Most people slow their own transformation by trying to control the very process that is designed to liberate them. They tighten around expectations. They attempt to manage outcomes. They distrust the intelligence of their inner guidance. In that tightening, they remain tied to the old timeline. Allowing unties the knot. Think of allowing as releasing the brakes on your own expansion. The moment you soften, the energy you have been holding back flows again. The higher configuration you have been sensing can finally emerge because you are no longer compressing yourself into the shape of who you used to be. The transition quickens not because you push harder, but because you stop pushing at all. Movement happens through receptivity, not force. The timeline you belong to rises to meet you the moment you allow yourself to meet it. Contrast is not the enemy of alignment. It is the mechanism through which alignment becomes unmistakably clear. Every unwanted experience, every moment of discomfort, every situation that feels out of place is not a sign that you are failing or drifting away from your path. It is a signal revealing what no longer fits the frequency you are growing into. Contrast sharpens your awareness. It refines your direction. It shows you, with precision, the vibrational edges you have outgrown and the deeper coherence your being is ready to inhabit. When something feels off, it is not because life is working against you. It is because your internal state has shifted enough that the old pattern can no longer go unnoticed. Contrast amplifies misalignment only so you can recognize it. And recognition is power. It is the moment you stop unconsciously participating in what does not reflect you. As soon as you see clearly what no longer resonates, your energy begins to release it, not through force, but through simple awareness. Awareness withdraws participation. And without participation, the outdated frequency loses its influence. Contrast does not define your trajectory. It reveals it. When something does not feel aligned, it directs your attention toward the state that would feel aligned. When something contracts your energy, it points you toward the version of yourself that would feel expansive in the same situation. In this way, contrast becomes a precision tool. It removes ambiguity. It eliminates confusion. It shows you what belongs to the identity you are stepping into and what belongs to the identity you are stepping out of. You do not need to interpret contrast as a setback. You do not need to spiral into analysis or assume you are moving in the wrong direction. Contrast appears more intensely when you are closest to an inner shift. As your vibration rises, anything that does not match your new coherence becomes louder, brighter, more visible. This visibility is not punishment. It is purification. The old frequency stands out only so it can be released. Allowing it to surface without resistance accelerates alignment. When you treat contrast as refinement rather than conflict, you experience it differently. The emotional charge softens. The sense of struggle dissolves. Instead of trying to fix what feels wrong, you begin to recognize what is pointing you toward what feels right. Every contraction becomes a doorway to clarity. Every moment of tension becomes an invitation to choose a state more aligned with your higher trajectory. Contrast becomes guidance. Precision is the gift contrast offers. It narrows your vibrational focus. It sharpens your ability to sense the difference between what your old identity would choose and what your new identity is ready to embody. Through contrast, you learn the language of your own resonance. You become fluent in the subtle signals that guide you into coherence. Contrast is not a deviation from the path. It is part of the path. It is the sculptor that reveals the shape of your alignment by removing everything that does not belong to your emerging frequency. Stabilization begins the moment you realize that identity is not a single choice but a repeated returning. It is the continual aligning with the version of yourself you have chosen to embody. Not through force, not through discipline, but through presence. Presence is what reaffirms the new state each time you soften into it. Presence is what allows the new frequency to become familiar rather than momentary. When you return again and again to the chosen state of being, you create inner consistency. And inner consistency is what transforms a shift into a baseline. A baseline is not built through intensity. It is built through repetition without strain. Each time you choose the coherent version of yourself, you strengthen its structure. Each time you lean into the state that reflects your higher alignment, you reinforce the signal the field responds to. The new identity begins to stabilize not because you hold it tightly, but because you return to it naturally. You stop rehearsing old emotional patterns. You stop feeding old interpretations. You stop drifting into the assumptions that once defined your previous timeline. And through this quiet refusal to return to what no longer resonates, stabilization takes root. Stabilization is the point where the new identity becomes easier to access than the old one. Where the new state feels like home, and the old one feels like a distortion. This happens gradually, subtly, without dramatic revelation. It happens through the accumulation of moments in which you choose alignment over habit. Each moment seems small, but each moment compounds. Coherence grows through these accumulated choices until the new identity becomes your default orientation. Inner consistency does not require perfection. It requires willingness. It requires awareness. It requires the gentle decision to return to who you choose to be, even after moments of contraction or confusion. You do not lose your progress when you momentarily slip into an old pattern. You reinforce your progress when you return. The return is the practice. The return is the signal. The return is the stabilizing force that teaches the field exactly who you are now. As stabilization strengthens, the emotional weight of the old timeline fades. Triggers weaken. Old narratives lose their authority. Past identities feel distant, as though they belong to someone else entirely. This distance is the evidence of stabilization. It shows that the old frequency no longer has a place to anchor within you. The new identity is holding the space now. It is the reference point through which you interpret your reality. And because perception shapes experience, your entire world begins to reorganize around this stable coherence. Stability is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of a consistent inner orientation regardless of what arises. It is the ability to remain aligned even as contrast appears, even as old echoes surface, even as life shifts around you. Stability is practiced presence. It is the art of choosing your identity again and again until the choice becomes natural, effortless, and inevitable. Through this constancy, the new timeline solidifies, and your reality begins to behave according to the self you have claimed. Reality begins to shift the moment your internal architecture becomes coherent enough to sustain the identity you have chosen. You do not need to manipulate external conditions for them to rearrange. They reorganize themselves because your vibrational pattern no longer matches the structures that once surrounded you. Life is always adjusting to the frequency you inhabit, not the one you wish for. And when your state stabilizes into a new coherence, the field responds with precision, reconfiguring people, timing, and circumstances to align with the identity you are embodying. This reconfiguration is often subtle at first. Conversations change tone. Interactions feel lighter or heavier depending on their resonance with your new state. Opportunities that once seemed distant begin to move toward you with little effort. Situations that previously held your attention lose their magnetism. This is not coincidence. It is structural. Reality is updating itself in real time to reflect the internal blueprint you are now holding more consistently. The world cannot present you with experiences that contradict your stabilized vibration, because those experiences no longer have an anchor within you. As your coherence strengthens, mismatched connections begin to fall away. Some relationships soften. Others naturally drift. This is not loss, it is calibration. The field is removing what cannot sustain its place within your expanding reality. At the same time, new people and circumstances appear with a sense of inevitability, as though they were always meant to intersect with your path. They are not arriving randomly. They are responding to the clarity of your new state. Resonance draws them in. Resonance organizes the meeting. Timing also begins to shift. Delays dissolve. Openings appear where none existed before. Situations that once required effort unfold effortlessly. When your internal architecture is fragmented, timing feels unpredictable and inconsistent. But when coherence stabilizes, timing becomes precise. Events align with an intelligence far beyond strategic planning. This precision is not magic, it is the natural coordination between your inner state and the field's responsiveness. Coherence anchors timing into harmony. Circumstances rearrange themselves because reality is not static. It is dynamic, adaptive, and sensitive to the instructions your vibrational state delivers. When you shift who you are being, you change the organizing principles of your life. Patterns that once defined your experience no longer apply. New patterns emerge, not because you forced them, but because you became the identity that requires them. Reality must update to stay consistent with the consciousness interacting with it. The reconfiguration may feel like expansion, clarity, or even unfamiliarity. But all of it reflects the same truth: the external world is adjusting to match the internal coherence you have stabilized. You are not waiting for life to change. Life is responding to the change already completed within you. And as this new vibrational architecture becomes your baseline, reality begins to behave as though the higher timeline has always been your home. There is a moment in every transformation when returning to the old path is no longer possible. Not because you refuse to go back, not because you force yourself forward, but because the version of you that once lived in that timeline simply no longer exists. Identity is the anchor of every reality you've experienced. When the anchor changes, the reality built around it cannot hold. And when the identity dissolves, the timeline dissolves with it. This threshold is subtle but powerful. It is the point at which the shift becomes irreversible. Reversion becomes impossible not through effort but through incompatibility. The old timeline cannot reassemble itself because it no longer has the vibrational structure required to sustain interaction with you. You have withdrawn the patterns of thought, emotion, and expectation that once fed it. You no longer think the way you used to think. You no longer feel the way you used to feel. You no longer respond in the way that once maintained the old identity. Without these components, the timeline has nothing to attach to. It loses coherence because its architect has stepped out of resonance. This point often arrives quietly. You notice that situations that once triggered you no longer activate the same reaction. You find yourself unable to engage in the same narratives, not through resistance, but because they feel foreign. You try to return to familiar emotional states, and they no longer form. You reach for old interpretations, and they no longer fit. This is the lived evidence that the identity sustaining the previous timeline has dissolved. What once felt like home now feels like an echo. And echoes cannot pull you back into their shape. The irreversible shift happens when your new state becomes more coherent than any past version of yourself. Coherence grants stability. Stability grants dominance. When the new identity holds more internal consistency than the old one, the field recognizes it as your primary instruction. The entire configuration of your reality begins to align with it. At that point, the old timeline is not just fading, it is collapsing. Its structure is no longer viable within your energetic field. It can be remembered, but not re-entered. Memory does not equal resonance. Irreversibility is not a moment of triumph. It is a moment of recognition. You realize that the self who once struggled to shift is no longer the one making choices. You have become someone else, someone who no longer needs the old timeline for identity, validation, or familiarity. And because you no longer need it, reality no longer provides it. The field does not deliver experiences that contradict your stabilized state. It cannot. The instruction has changed. At this threshold, the new trajectory becomes dominant not through force, but through truth. It is the most coherent expression of who you are now. It carries the emotional clarity, the vibrational precision, and the identity alignment that the old timeline lacked. And once this alignment reaches maturity, reversion ceases to be an option. You do not move backward because there is no backward to move into. The path behind you is simply gone, dissolved by the absence of the self who once walked it. Operating as consciousness means shifting from the narrow vantage point of the persona into the expansive awareness that contains it. The persona is a temporary configuration, a set of habits, preferences, beliefs, and emotional patterns that form a localized sense of self. It is useful, but it is not the source of your reality. The persona reacts. Consciousness observes. The persona interprets. Consciousness recognizes. And when you stop identifying with the persona as the entirety of who you are, you release the rigidity that binds you to specific timelines. You become fluid, open, and capable of moving across vibrational states with ease. Consciousness does not force alignment. It rests in alignment. It does not chase outcomes or attempt to manage every detail. It allows the field to reorganize around its state. When you operate as consciousness, your sense of self becomes spacious. You are no longer compressed into the narrow limitations of a story you once believed. You no longer filter your choices through the constraints of who you thought you had to be. Instead, you respond from the quiet intelligence of presence. Presence carries no tension. Presence carries no resistance. It holds only the clarity of the moment and the truth of your current frequency. In presence, identity becomes fluid. You can shift into new versions of yourself without friction because you are no longer holding tightly to the old ones. You understand that the persona is a costume, not a cage. You wear identities as tools rather than inhabit them as prisons. This fluidity is what allows timeline movement to become effortless. The less you cling to a fixed sense of self, the more freely you transition into the states that align with the trajectory you desire. Consciousness can move instantly. The persona moves slowly. The persona requires proof, reassurance, and stability. Consciousness requires only recognition. When you operate from awareness, your choices become cleaner. You stop choosing from fear or habit. You stop reacting from the echoes of older selves. Instead, you choose from clarity, from alignment, from the deeper intelligence that sees beyond appearances. This is why movement across timelines becomes natural. You are no longer trying to push the world into shape. You are inhabiting the state that naturally selects the world that matches it. Effort becomes unnecessary because resonance does the work. Operating as consciousness does not remove you from your life. It deepens your presence within it. You become more attuned to the subtleties of your own vibration. You notice when contraction appears without judging it. You recognize expansion without clinging to it. You move through experiences without defining yourself by them. This freedom allows your identity to shift in real time, making you compatible with higher trajectories as soon as your state aligns. When you stop gripping the persona, you step into the fluidity that consciousness always offers. And through that fluidity, timelines open. Realities shift. Possibility expands. Not because you forced transformation, but because you finally operated from the part of you that was never limited to begin with. Higher states of coherence bring reality closer to you. Not in the sense of proximity, but in the sense of responsiveness. When your frequency becomes unified, the delay between what you are being and what you are seeing shortens. The external world no longer needs time to catch up to your internal alignment because there is no internal contradiction slowing the translation. Reality reflects clarity with clarity. Precision meets precision. The field moves the moment you do, because there is no fragmented signal to interpret or reconcile. In lower states of coherence, your energy sends mixed instruction. Part of you holds expansion while another part retains contraction. Part of you moves forward while another part clings to what is familiar. These opposing currents create delay. The field must mirror what you stabilize, not what you momentarily touch. And when your state is inconsistent, the translation becomes slow, scattered, or unclear. But as coherence grows, the signal sharpens. The field no longer receives competing directions. It receives a singular frequency, and a singular frequency produces immediate reflection. This immediacy is not a reward. It is the natural physics of alignment. When you inhabit the state you choose without fragmentation, the universe does not need time to decipher the instruction. It recognizes the coherence instantly because coherence is recognition. A higher state is simply a clearer state. And clarity accelerates the unfolding of your external experience because there is no vibrational interference to delay it. You begin to notice that thoughts, emotions, and assumptions manifest more quickly. Not because you have gained some new ability, but because you have removed the internal noise that once diffused your influence. Your reality becomes more sensitive to your state. This sensitivity can feel empowering, but it also asks for awareness. In higher coherence, even subtle shifts in your internal landscape are mirrored back to you. The feedback loop tightens. What once took weeks to appear may now show itself within hours or minutes. The field becomes a real-time reflection of your consciousness. This rapid responsiveness teaches you to refine your state with greater precision. You no longer ignore minor contractions, because you see how immediately they shape the timeline you inhabit. You no longer dismiss moments of expansion, because you witness how quickly they open new possibilities. The world becomes a mirror without delay, showing you the truth of your vibration with a clarity that leaves no room for confusion. As feedback becomes immediate, you begin to understand that manifestation was never about effort. It was always about alignment. The speed of reflection is proportional to the stability of your inner state. When your coherence becomes your baseline, the gap between intention and manifestation closes because the gap between who you are and what you experience no longer exists. In higher states, life responds as you respond. It shifts as you shift. It reveals as you recognize. The universe no longer waits for you to become clear. It reflects the moment clarity is lived. The higher timeline is not an ending. It is the beginning of a wider reality in which your expansion becomes the natural state rather than the exception. You do not arrive at this horizon as someone completing a journey. You arrive as someone who has shed the identity that once limited what you could perceive. The moment you stabilized the new frequency, the old horizon dissolved, revealing a broader field of possibility, one that was always present but inaccessible until your coherence matured enough to meet it. This horizon is open because higher timelines are not linear. They do not lead to fixed outcomes or predetermined states. They unfold. They reveal. They expand as you expand. Each moment of alignment widens the field. Each recognition deepens your access to versions of yourself you could not previously inhabit. You stand now within a reality that responds fluidly, directly, and immediately to the quality of your consciousness. This responsiveness is not the conclusion of your shift. It is the environment in which your next evolution takes place. When you realize you have already shifted, something profound happens. You stop striving to reach the higher timeline and begin living from it. The striving belonged to the old identity. The embodiment belongs to the new one. From this vantage point, life feels less like a sequence of challenges and more like an unfolding dialogue. You are no longer trying to become aligned, you are refining alignment. You are no longer seeking your path, you are shaping it through presence. This shift in awareness marks your entry into the expanded horizon. Here, creation becomes subtle and immediate. You sense the resonance of choices before you make them. You feel the direction of your own becoming with increasing clarity. You no longer chase possibilities, you select them through your state. You no longer fear missteps, you recognize that every moment reflects your current frequency with such precision that course correction is built into the experience itself. The field is responsive enough to guide you without struggle. The open horizon also reveals that there is no final version of you. Expansion is continuous. The identity you have stabilized now is simply the latest expression of your coherence. As your awareness deepens, new layers of alignment become available. Higher timelines branch into even higher ones. Each carries a more refined expression of the same core truth: reality mirrors your state, and your state is fluid, infinite, and capable of expanding far beyond anything the persona once imagined. Standing here, you recognize that the shift has already occurred. You are not waiting for confirmation. You are living the confirmation. The old timeline cannot return because the self who belonged to it is gone. What remains is an open field, a living horizon, a space in which your evolution continues to unfold without resistance. You are no longer becoming ready. You are ready. And from this readiness, the next chapter of your expansion begins. If this transmission aligns with who you are becoming, subscribe and share it with someone whose timeline is ready to rise.